Hello, my name is Blake Vitasic, and I'm going to be starting us off by giving a brief description of our project. I will begin with the characteristics of the project. The first slide shows that the centerpiece of our entire project is a shared use path. The project dimensions are 1,350 linear feet by 10 foot wide. There are also going to be a couple different sections involved within the path. The preferred section will have an asphalt finish and be the most used section of the project. There will also be a section over steep terrain. To combat this, a raised wooden boardwalk or other bridge structure will be implemented. The proposed trail will begin by attaching to an existing trail. It will also attach to a current project of a bridge replacement. The really good thing about connecting to this current project is the bridge has a dedicated pedestrian path. Obvious uses for the trail are jogging, walking, hiking, and biking for members of the community of Springfield and visitors from other areas. The next slide breaks down the stakeholders who are in this project. The City of Springfield and its community is the first stakeholder. The City of Springfield is the client of the project, and its community are the primary potential users of the trail. The second stakeholder is a nonprofit organization called Cardinal Trails. They are partnering with the city in this endeavor and will have input in the design and implementation of the trail. Cardinal Trails will be treated as a client, but the official client is the city. The final stakeholder is the State Department of Transportation. They are a stakeholder because the project is 100% funded by federal grant money. This means that the project must comply with all SDOT regulations. The next slide gives a brief description of the location of the trail. It is located within the city limits of Springfield, on the west side of Riverside Lane and the north side of Main Street. As stated before, the trail attaches to and complements the current bridge replacement project over I-98. One final note on the location of the Main Street trail is there is a need to purchase 6 parcels of land where the project is supposed to take place. Finally, there are several reasons for the implementation of this project within the Springfield community. It will provide recreational opportunities because there is a current lack of facilities for recreation in the proposed area of the project. The new area will provide a place to perform these activities safely away from traffic and crime. It will also allow for community bonding with a lot of people out and about interacting with each other. It complements and attaches to the bridge replacement, including the pedestrian facility. This place for recreation also coincides with community-wide health initiatives.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Shaw. Tonight I'm going to discuss our project organization and project communication. To begin with, S&V Engineering is a relatively small firm. We employ 13 individuals, and out of the 13, 2 of them are owners. Of the 2 owners, one focuses on the marketing aspects, while the other one is the project manager for all of our projects. Since we are relatively small, and the fact that we could be working on up to as many as 4 projects at a given time, we do utilize the weaker matrix project structure. As you can see from the diagram, all of our projects utilize a project manager, administrator, senior project engineer, senior engineer, engineer, and subconsultants when necessary. Now, the project manager's main responsibilities are the development of the project proposal, budget formulation, and project plan. Also, he's responsible for any sort of external communications to the client. When subconsultants are needed, he then goes out and identifies and then does the contracting with those subconsultants. The senior project engineer works as a technical advisor for both the senior engineer and engineer. Also, the senior project engineer is oftentimes a project manager in training and acts as a backup to the project manager when necessary. The senior engineer receives a work breakdown structure, subdivides that to the work packages for the engineer. The senior engineer also ensures that all the plans are carried out according to specification and works within the AutoCAD system as necessary. The engineer's primary responsibility is to support the senior engineer while working within the AutoCAD system. All of our projects utilize an administrator whose primary responsibilities are payroll, subconsultant invoicing, as well as tracking any sort of project expenses that we might have. When we do utilize subconsultants Generally, they work on geographical surveys, environmental assessments, topographical surveys, or any sort of title appraisals. At any given time, we could have multiple sub-consultants working on our projects. For the project communication aspect, since we are relatively small, we do utilize live meetings where we review the Gantt chart, any sort of technical specifications, or review any sort of milestones that we might have hit. Additionally, when we utilize sub-consultants, we do use conference calls or email. This concludes the project organization and project communication.
Hello, my name is Sarah Stone and I'll be discussing planning for our project. The first slide shows a diagram that describes the scope of the project. The overall scope of this project includes all activities involved in preparing construction plans for the Main Street Trail, abiding by all applicable regulations. The next slide covers the approach to the project. Sub-consultants will be used to handle various tasks. Good communication is key in the execution of our project. The client will be updated monthly or more often as needed if questions or concerns arise. The team will communicate bi-weekly in order to track project performance, and communication will occur as often as needed with sub-consultants. The next slide discusses some details of the planned schedule. After receipt of the notice to proceed from the State Department of Transportation and the local public agency, the project will begin. The client wants construction to begin directly following the completion of the bridge replacement project, since the trail will be integrated with the new bridge. Remaining on schedule and within budget is critical in execution of this project. Our project is estimated to be completed in June 2012, assuming the notice to proceed is received in November 2010. The next slide shows the schedule for the project, including durations. The following slide discusses some general components of risk management. Risk analysis will be completed at the start of the project in order to assess both positive and negative risks, as well as procedures to follow should that risk situation arise. This list will be updated regularly, removing risks as they become obsolete and adding as new risks arise. Sub-consultants will be involved in risk planning in their respective areas of expertise. The last slide in my section highlights some information about risk analysis. There are several potential schedule bottlenecks. The acquisition of right-of-way could go to condemnation, extending the schedule. Utility coordination involves a series of formal procedures that must be followed to identify any conflicts with the proposed location of the trail, and any relocation required for the utilities can extend the schedule. Any required permits or design changes due to environmental laws and regulations can have a negative impact on the schedule as well. That's why it is essential to identify potential risks to the project upfront and plan for them.
I'm Jennifer Sharkey and I'll be talking about the estimated cost and budget. Budgets are used to allocate time and resources to the project. The types of budgets used today are project labor budget, which is based on man-hour projections, as well as project expenses and project sub-consultant expenses. The Main Street Trail was broken down into two categories, which are preliminary engineering services and right-of-way engineering services. Now I'll go through the preliminary engineering services and each budget created. The first budget identified was the total labor budget. To get this budget, a man-hour projection must first be conducted. The 8 categories shaded in gray have specific work line items associated with that task. Man-hour needs were identified for each task as well as each labor classification, which include project manager, senior project engineer, senior engineer, as well as other classifications. The total estimated man-hours for this project is 789 hours. The total man-hours were then used to create a project labor budget. Again, the budget is broken down by category and labor classification. A labor rate for 2011 was used since most of the design will be completed in 2011. A labor multiplier of 2.374 was used based on 15% contingency and overhead costs. The labor total for this project is $50,243. While labor costs account for most of the project costs, other expenses are incurred, such as total project expenses. Here they are broken down by category and type of expense. To convert each type of expense to a dollar amount, an expense rate is used to determine the cost. For the Main Street Trail, the total project expense is $1,925. Another expense incurred is the project subconsultant expense. These are paid for as a lump sum rather than by work unit. Again, an expense rate was used to provide contingencies for the subconsultant expenses. The total subconsultant expense is $27,005. By adding together the project labor budget, total project expense, and total project subconsultant expense, the total preliminary engineering services cost is $79,173. The same steps were taken for the right-of-way engineering services. First, a man-hour projection was made of 34 hours, which led to a labor total of $2,200. The total project expense for right-of-way engineering services is $293, with a total subconsultant expense of $18,168. Since most of the right-of-way engineering services will be conducted by subconsultants, this is the reason that the subconsultant expense is greater than the labor total for right-of-way engineering services. Adding together the different budgets yields a total right-of-way engineering cost of $20,660. To obtain the total project cost, the total preliminary engineering cost, and the right-of-way engineering costs are added together to yield a total project cost of $99,883.
My name is Jesse Stanley, and I will be discussing the performance measures of our project. For any project to be managed and completed successfully, it is important to measure performance along the way. It will allow our project manager to identify cost and schedule problems early and take steps for remediation quickly. Our goal will be to collect the appropriate data that will keep our project manager informed and give them up-to-date feedback and information to make timely decisions to keep the project moving in the right direction. We plan to do an earned value analysis of the individual tasks that make up the entire project. As part of the earned value analysis, we will calculate both the cost variance and schedule variance, which will give our project manager immediate information on how well we are staying within budget and on schedule. In order to give our project manager structured guidelines to interpret the information we provide, we will calculate both a cost performance index and schedule performance index ratio. We will then set thresholds for these values at which their status will change to alert the project manager of any potential problems. The next slide shows how we plan to track the data for our earned value analysis. We plan to keep separate data for both the preliminary engineering and the right-of-way engineering. As our project progresses, we will be able to periodically input valuable data so that we can monitor how well we are staying on track in respect to both cost and schedule. Measuring performance will provide our project team with a clear picture of the health of the Main Street Trail project, as well as to instill a high level of confidence in our progress. Carefully and purposefully measuring the performance during the course of our project will decrease the amount of crashing that will need to be done towards the end in order to complete our schedule.
I'm Jennifer Sharkey, and I'll wrap up the presentation by discussing the project evaluation and termination. Due to the various stakeholders in this project, there are 2 project evaluation steps. First, a meeting is conducted with the client to ensure that expectations are met for the design. Second, final tracings are submitted to the State Department of Transportation to ensure that the trail design meets all state regulations. Once approval is granted from the project evaluation step, the project termination can then commence. First, a final bid package is submitted to the client as well as the State Department of Transportation in order for the client to advertise the project to get construction bids for the construction of the trail. Second, in-house, we will close books on the project and wrap up any financial obligations that are still withstanding. Third, appropriate files are then printed and filed accordingly in order to ensure that documentation is kept at the office in case design questions arise when being constructed. This concludes our presentation of the Main Street Trail. We will now open the floor to any questions.